So my five-folder book report was on "I'm a Taxi" by Deborah Ellis. Deborah Ellis is an award-winning author and a peace activist. This book is 205 pages. It's an adventure book. One of the main quotes from it is, "Diego grinned. A decision had been made. He felt better already." So the summary of the book: uh, Diego lives in the woman's prison in Bolivia because his parents were caught in drug trafficking. So he lives there with his sister and his mom, and his dad lives in the men's prison. So prior to this, they had a pretty good life. They lived on a farm with him, his mom, his dad, and his little sister Cornea, and they farmed cocoa leaves, and uh, yeah, they lived there, and their life was pretty good. So since he lives in the prison, but he's not technically like a prisoner because he didn't do anything wrong. He can leave the prison from from certain hours. So from when it's like 7 to like by the time they go to bed. So he goes out and he sells the knitting items that his mother made, and he runs jobs for people. And he's called a taxi, so he runs errands for people outside the prison because they can't get out. And um, he has a lot of responsibilities. So he has to watch his sister a lot. One time he was watching his sister, and he lost her. He wasn't paying attention and he lost her. So in the struggle of trying to find her, he knocked over a big bowl of soup. There's like a big pot of chupe. So they charged him what they would have made if they would have sold the whole thing. So he's in big debt, and he has his friend Mando that he sells the street goods and stuff with, and he does the errands with. He was convincing him to get involved with the drug production business and the cocaine production business in Bolivia. So now since he's in debt, he's like he he really has no other option. So he goes with Mando into the jungle with Rock and some other drug bosses and three other boys that are about his age, and they're in the okay. So he tells his mom that he's gonna be gone for 2 weeks, and he's living with his dad in the men's prison for 2 weeks. So they're in the jungle, stomping on cocoa leaves and mixing them with the chemicals to make cocaine, and they're in there for about like three to 4 weeks. So at the end, towards the end, um, Diego and Mando are kind of fed up with the whole production business, and they decide that they're gonna steal the cocaine and then bring it back to where they live and sell it there to make their money. But it ends up not going well, and the the two main like drug bosses, Rock and Smith, they catch them and they get it back. So Diego and Mando are running through the jungle, and Smith actually catches Mando, and he has him on a helicopter, and he's threatening to kill him. So Mando was trying to jump into a river below the helicopter, but he missed, and he fell on rocks and he died. And then Diego was still running through the forest, and Smith was catching up to him, and he was fine. He was like yelling at him like stuff that didn't make sense to him, and so Smith was saying like um, how anything in the jungle could kill Diego if he didn't kill Diego, and then he fell in quicksand. And then Diego picked up Smith's rifle and he was gonna shoot him, but he couldn't like bring himself to kill him, so he just left him there to die. And then he was wandering through the jungle until he found cocoa leaves, and he was eating them. And then, because he was so hungry, and then a little girl about his age thought he was a thief and pointed a gun at him, and then she brought him back to their village, and then their parents, the little girl's parents that was starting to shoot him, they brought him food, and he slept there, and then he went to sleep, and that was like kind of the end of the book. So some characterization traits. I'd say Diego is hardworking because he always stays on task and he doesn't like cheat people or he doesn't steal people's money. And I'd say Mando is impulsive because um, he just makes really quick decisions. Like he made a really quick decision to just go and make cocaine. Like that's not a really good decision. So some settings. One of the settings is the woman's prison where he spends most of the beginning of the book in, and the square. That's where him and Mando um, like work as a taxi and do their errands and sell their merchandise on the street. And then the jungle was like towards the end of the book, kinda, because that's where they made the drugs, and that's where Mando died, and that's where Diego was running away. And symbols, there's like two symbols I noticed. One was they were on a path, and Diego was like he wasn't quite sure where the path was going, and he didn't know if he was leading it right. But I think this symbolizes like when he got into this whole like deal of like the business, like so yeah, like he didn't know like what he was doing, where he was going. And then another one I noticed was the parrots. And so right after he escaped from Smith, a big flock of parrots flew by him, and I think this represents like how he felt like free and like everything was okay now and like he's good. And so figurative language, um, I found a simile. It is he's afraid his mama will find out. Mando said, and Diego felt as if he had been cut with a knife because his friend peer pressured him into smoking, and then it like for his best friend to say that to him, that kind of hurt him. Personification, the ground dropped away into a canyon. I think the author chose this term because this is the canyon that Mando died in, so she wanted to make sure that we knew how big the canyon was. And metaphor, this was one of the drug bosses talking. He said 500 kilos of leaves. Do you think these little city worms you brought us can carry that much through the jungle? He's saying that they're like weak and they are not strong enough to do the job that needed to be done. Personal connection. One of the connections I made was the strength of a family bond. Because Diego kind of like put away his childhood to provide for his family. He was like the sole provider of his family at age 12. And another connection I made is friendship. Because Diego and Mando were good friends, but then Mando like peer pressured him into smoking. And yeah. So I rate this book 8 out of 10 chupes. I chose chupes for that because that was kind of like the turning incident, because that's what kind of forced him to make that decision and go and work for Rock and Smith. And I rate this book 8 out of 10 because I thought it was a good book all throughout, but then at the end, like it kind of left you like a cliffhanger. Like it didn't tell you like if he ever got home and reconnected with his family. So that's why I rate that 8 out of 10. Two questions I have was his mom worried after he didn't show up for 2 weeks? Like how does she feel about that? Because he told his mom that he was going to be gone for 2 weeks, but then he ended up staying for like 3 or 4. And then another question I have is, did he ever get back home and reconnect with his family? Because it never really said that. And then yeah, the ending of the book, I kind of already said it in the summary, but it's like when Smith was chasing him, and then he escaped from him because Smith fell in the quicksand, and then he found his way to the village, and then he went to bed, and then the book was over. So I think for the Romeo and Juliet archetypes, I think that's how you say it. I think Diego is Romeo, because yes. All right, so I think he's Romeo because he he makes his own decisions, but they're kind of affected by other things. I think Mother is the nurse because she always takes care of Diego like she takes care of Juliet. I think Mando is Mercutio because he's always joking with them. He's always joking with Romeo, and that'd be Diego. So Mando's joking with Diego. I think Rock is Tybalt's because Rock always wants to fight, and he's like violent. And then I think Smith is Benvolio because Smith stops Rock from beating the boys because he's like a peacekeeper kind of. And so yeah, I rate this book 8 out of 10 Chupes. And yeah, that's the book. I'm a Taxi.